Transportation Safety Board of Canada has launched a full investigation into the plane crash Tuesday that killed former cabinet minister and political analyst Jean Lapierre, as well as 4 members of his family and 2 pilots. Joining me now is Federal Transport Minister Marc Garneau. Mr. Garneau, welcome, and thank you so much for coming in this morning.
Good morning.
I want to speak about the investigation, but before we get to that, I want to take a moment to talk about Jean. And it's still hard to believe, isn't it, that he's gone?
It's unreal, really, somebody who was so present in Quebec and indeed across Canada. One moment is suddenly gone, and a very, very big hole, and so many of us knew him.
Did you know him personally? Can you tell us about any encounters or interviews, perhaps, that you've had with Jean Lapierre?
Well, actually, I've seen him on both sides of the fence. Once as a political colleague. In fact, back in 2005, when I was asked by the Liberals whether I wanted to enter into politics, it was Jean Lapierre, who was the Quebec lieutenant, who sort of took me in hand and said, well, this is what you're going to do. You're going to run in this particular riding. So I first met him when he was the transport minister, a job that I occupy today. Yes. And then over the years after that, I met him on a number of occasions when he was interviewing me. So I was in the hot seat.
And how was he as an interviewer?
He's a tough interviewer. Here's somebody who really is passionate about politics. He understands all of the issues. He goes to the heart of the matter. He's polite, but he's very, very firm, and but always fair. And so I have to say that for a commentator, political commentator, to be so fair and so respected across the country is unusual, but he was one of them.
And maybe that, perhaps that is why he always seemed to get the scoop or know, because politicians like you just trusted him, right?
There's an element of that, because he was a fair player. It was also the fact that he had an enormous Rolodex. He was a network of people that was unbelievable. He worked very, very hard, and that's why very often he had the scoop.
A team of investigators arrived at Les Îles de la Madeleine crash site yesterday. How is the Transport Ministry aiding or assisting in this investigation?
Well, it's important for people to know that the Transportation Safety Board is an independent entity. These are experts who know all about flying, the regulations, how accidents can happen. And so these experts are now on the islands, as you say, but they operate independently. In other words, they're not directly linked to Transport Canada. Right. However, as minister, I can appoint an observer who will collaborate with them, who will be with them and follow their investigation, which will take months, and comes back to Transport Canada and tells us where it's at.
There is a lot of speculation as to what might have caused this accident, weather being one of them. Do you know anything at this point as to what may have played a factor in this?
It's important for us not to speculate at this point. There are a number of reasons that can cause a tragedy like this, and our hearts go out to the families, not only of Jean Lapierre, but also the pilots as well. It's always a terrible thing when this happens. The weather was challenging, there's no question about it. But there are a number of other things that can be involved in it, and it's important for us not to speculate. The state of the airplane, was there a malfunction in equipment, the pilot, all of those things have to be looked at very, very carefully before coming to a decision.
Okay, and obviously we don't want to go to any conclusions, and this investigation, you mentioned several months it could take before we have any sort of answers as to what happened? It
could take quite a while. I understand they're going to take the remaining pieces of the aircraft and bring them off the island, I think back to Ottawa. They'll continue their investigation. You want to look at the record books of the maintenance on the aircraft. You want to obviously look at the pilot's experience with that particular aircraft. You want to, at the same time, look at the records that may exist with respect to the radar picture, the communications that between the pilot and ground. Any information that you can glean. Is there anything on board that may have recorded some information? Typically, a small plane like that doesn't have a black box like on a big commercial airplane, but you've got to. It's detective work. It's putting a jigsaw puzzle together, and a difficult one.
We spoke about the man Jean Lapierre was, and now there's talk about how he should be honored and will be honored. Do you think he should get a national funeral here in Quebec?
It's something that goes according to some very specific rules and what qualifies. And if Quebec makes that decision, I fully respect their decision based on the criteria. Certainly, somebody who was very respected, very much loved by a lot of people. We've seen the tributes that have come out to Jean Lapierre. Really, one of the very special Quebecers. And in English and in French.
Yes.
He explained Quebecers
bridge
to Canada. And as many people have said, he explained Canadians to Quebecers. So he did something wonderful for this country.
And we'll end on that note. Thank you so much, Mr. Garneau, for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.